When you say to a family that if you come, we're going to break you up, they don't come.
Said that as president, he would allow states to monitor women's pregnancies.
It's not just pregnancy, it's contraceptions, it's in vitro fertilization.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah.
As we broke Roe v. Wade.
And it's really working out well. And they're very, very happy.
Today, we're going to play a little game of compare and contrast. I'm going to play two clips, one of Joe Biden 10 years ago and one from just the other day. First, Joe Biden speaking on the topic of Israel in 2014. Let's go.
It's more than merely a moral obligation we have. It's a security necessity. It's for both Israel's sake and for the United States. The security of Israel and the United States is inextricably tied. And we will never, ever, ever abandon Israel out of our own self-interest.
I mean, you can just see how much the man has declined looking at him 10 years ago and now. Could you imagine the president trying to even pronounce the word inextricably today? But now, let's look again at Joe Biden speaking to CNN just a few days ago on the same topic, Israel.
I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. It's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used that have been used.
Artillery shells as well.
Yeah, artillery.
So much vigor there. Now, two things stand out pretty obviously from these two clips. Number one, there's the incredible decline, of course, in Joe Biden's vigor, his mental acuity. The man has aged and been aged incredibly by the office and time. But two, the more important thing, I think, for our purposes is the huge backflip when it comes to Israel. Threatening the government of Israel that the U.S. would withhold aid, and this is key, if they go into Rafah in the Gaza Strip to finish off Hamas. Now, this is, of course, a tremendous gift to Hamas and their masters in Tehran. Donald Trump said as much and more in the past few hours, posting on Truth Social. Crooked Joe Biden, whether he knows it or not, just said he will withhold weapons from Israel as they fight to eradicate Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Hamas murdered thousands of innocent civilians, including babies, and are still holding Americans hostage, if the hostages are still alive. Yet Crooked Joe, Trump says, is taking the side of these terrorists, just like he has sided with the radical mobs taking over our college campuses because his donors are funding them. Biden is weak, corrupt, and leading the world straight into World War III. Remember, this war in Israel, just like the war in Ukraine, he says, would never have started if I was in the White House, Trump said. But very soon we will be back and once again demanding peace through strength. That was Donald Trump just a few hours ago, but there is even beyond all of this, with this backflip on Israel, a bigger issue that we need to get into, and that is why Biden made this move. And I think the reasons why this move was made are obvious for all to see. Because in doing so as well, he may have landed himself, Joe Biden, in some trouble. Indeed, some analysts are now saying that this could be, and would certainly be more likely if the parties were reversed, an impeachable offense, given that the likely reason Biden withheld the aid was to help not American foreign policy or national security interests, but to assist the Democrats in the unenviable task of shoring up the Muslim vote in key states like Michigan, where U.S. support for Israel has voters furious. Because remember, this is exactly this whole political quid pro quo what Donald Trump was accused of doing when the Democrats tried to impeach him for threatening Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky, telling Zelensky that he might withhold military aid to help in the fight against Putin's invading armies if Zelensky didn't cooperate with an investigation into Hunter Biden's oil and gas business activities in Ukraine. So again, let's dive into the archives. Here's Joe Biden on the Jimmy Kimmel program in September 2019.
The idea that someone would call a head of a foreign state ahead of time, withhold significant military aid that's badly needed in order to prevent the Russian separatists who are in Ukraine from taking over Ukraine, and then ask basically can you cooperate with Rudy Giuliani? He's coming over. Talked about getting the Justice Department engaged in this. I mean, it's such a blatant abuse of power that it just I don't think it can stand.
Yeah, well, do you think it is an impeachable, this particular instance is an impeachable offense?
Based on the material that they acknowledge today, it seems to me it's awful hard to avoid the conclusion that it is an impeachable offense and a violation of constitutional responsibility.
Whoa, hang on. What's that you say, Mr. President? Withholding foreign military aid from a Democratic ally facing an existential war for your own domestic political purposes is an impeachable offense? Why, I never